background about myself. So I currently serve as the CEO of Socially In. I'll tell you a little bit more about Socially In, but in short, it's a social media agency. And a little bit of background about myself. So in 2005, I got my first computer. Fast forward to 2007, I started a sports forum, and I did an infamous Google search that completely changed my life. I Google searched how to get more users on my forum. So I was trying to get more users on this free sports forum that I had that essentially was all Saints fans talking about the Saints. Because of that, I found Warrior Forum, I found blackhatworld.com, and I ended up doing internet marketing. So for a long period of my life, I did internet marketing. I was doing paper install campaigns. I ran an AdSense farm, so I had a couple of different websites making like $5 to $10 a day. And I did that for a long time. And then fast forward one more time to 2011, I started Socially In, and today we are one of the only agencies in the nation who only focuses on social media. And we have over 70 employees across the United States. We have a full production studio in Atlanta, which is that studio reel everyone was just looking at. That was content that we created for our clients. We work with Fortune 500 clients, so some of our flagship accounts are accounts like Samsung, Nikon, Carnival Cruise Line, and many more. We have 3 different business units today, and we provide all of these different services. So getting a little bit salesy here, but we do social strategy, we do community management, we have, again, full production studio in Atlanta. We manage ad budgets across all of the major social channels. We manage about $10 million a year right now. My last talk was on TikTok, and about 25% of that spend is going to TikTok, which is mind-boggling. We do data analysis, we do social listening, we help with influencer activations, and we have an entire division of our business that focuses on social selling. So if you're a B2B company and you want to use LinkedIn to get more leads, that division helps with that. We've won numerous awards for our work, so here's just a few awards. Top Social Agency is kind of the one that I'm most proud of because they actually call and interview our customers. And then we also won the 13th fastest growing company in Atlanta this year. If you're in Atlanta, we have an award ceremony at the zoo on April 28th. We were one of the first 300 global TikTok agency partners. We're Meta Marketing Preferred Partners. We're Sprout Social Partners, which I'll talk a little bit more about because we're talking about ROI and how to measure ROI. Sprout Social can help you with that. And then a snapshot of some of our clients. Cool, let's get into it. So what I'm going to talk about is, number one, what is social ROI? So we all know what ROI is, but what is social ROI? How do you measure ROI? So I'm going to give you guys step-by-step instructions on how we do it and how you can do it. Some tools that can help you measure ROI. And then ultimately, how can you improve ROI? So just a quick show of hands. Who here feels like they don't know what they're getting out of their social media efforts? You're spending money, you don't know what's going on. Cool. Okay, so what is social ROI? So generally speaking, social media ROI is a measure of all of the social media actions that create value divided by the investment that you made. So here's a simple formula. So we don't at Socially In actually use this formula, but I thought it was interesting, and so I pulled it, and I thought you guys would find it interesting. But the value achieved minus the investment made divided by the investment times 100. And if you're above a 1 or 100, you're doing well. And I'll get a little bit more into detail there. Again, I don't think we totally agree with this at Socially In, but I thought it was interesting, so I put it in there. Cool, so it's a 4-step process that I'll go over on how you can measure ROI, but it's about gaining not just sales and conversions, but brand awareness, engagement, building brand equity, which will ultimately lead to dollars and cents down the road. Here's a statistic or a graph that I found online. The most common metric that content executives use to measure how their content is performing is engagement, by a lot, as you can see. And now this makes sense, right? Because they're content executives, their main goal is to drive engagement, so that's what they care about the most. Cool. So let's get into what to do in order to calculate your ROI. So number one, figure out what you're spending. Calculate your spend. So how are you guys creating content? Do you have an in-house team? Do you have an agency? Are you using a freelancer? Calculate all of those costs. What is it costing you to create content? Also take into consideration the cost of tools, right? So a lot of times whenever we're talking about ROI, the tool that you're paying $50, $100 a month for kind of goes out the window because it's not that big of a cost, but calculate the cost of all the different tools that you're using in order to get your social media done. Also think about the budget that you've allocated towards ad spend. If you're going to spend all this money to create original content, you want to be able to make sure that the right eyeballs are seeing that content. A lot of times we see people spend tons of money on production and then very little on ad budget. And I'm just like, okay, well, if you don't spend money on ads, no one's actually going to see that production that you did. And then obviously if you're using any agencies or consultants, make sure you're calculating that in your spend. Second, define clear social media objectives. So think about various ways that social media might create value, right? So business conversions, brand awareness and sentiment, customer experience, employee trust and job satisfaction, supplier and partner confidence. So what are the different objectives that you want to set up? Step 3, track the metrics that align with those objectives. Like when you're thinking about social, there's just so many different things that you can track. Audience reach, audience engagement, time spent on website from social media, the leads that you generated from social. Email newsletter growth is something that a lot of our clients are interested in. Webinar or event attendees. So if you have a webinar strategy or if you have an event strategy, you can measure that. And then obviously last but not least, the revenue generated. So you can get caught up in the numbers, but try to measure what is working. And if you're working with an agency or a consultant or even an in-house team, make sure they're not reporting to you on a weekly basis and just giving you fluff, right? Like make sure that the KPIs, the metrics that you're looking at on a weekly basis align with those objectives that you set early on. Step number 4 is to create an ROI report. This is really important, right? So if you have stakeholders, if you have an executive team, if you have a leadership team that needs to understand the investment and what's going on, make sure that you're creating a comprehensive report that actually is going to show the impact of social. So there's a couple of things that you can do, right? Like you can use a template. So you can go online. There's tons of templates out there that will that you can use that will showcase the impact of social, the ROI. Second thing that I would recommend is to use plain language, right? So try to stay away from acronyms. For people who don't understand what CPC is, what CPM means, try to break it down, use plain language. 3, tie the results back to business objectives. So whenever you're reporting, don't just say we generated 50 leads. Let them know how those 50 leads that we generated tie back into revenue or tie back into the main business objective. Number 4 is use KPIs to track short-term and long-term progress. And then I would agree on the goals up front. This is really important. So one of the things that we do at Socially In is we operate on a month-to-month basis. So a lot of agencies will sign 6-month, 12-month long contracts. And the reason we don't do that is because we set concrete goals up front, and then we quite literally ask the client, like, hey, you're spending $12,000 a month with us. Here's exactly what we plan to achieve in the next 3 months. Do you agree with that? Like quite literally. And then they say, yes, I agree with that. So same idea with your own companies is get on the same page as to what the goals are. Everyone should be in agreement of what the goals are up front. Articulate the limitations that you might have, right? So what you can and can't do based on your resources. So refer to your resources. If, for example, you're leading marketing at your company and your boss is saying, well, we're spending all this money and it's not working, let them know that you might be limited by your resources. So just at the end of the day, I think it's important to let leadership know, hey, here's what I'm working with. Cool. So a couple of tools that I want to give you guys. So that formula that I mentioned earlier, Hootsuite actually made a calculator. You can scan this or you can go to this URL here. And essentially it's going to allow you to input some variables, and at the end of it, it'll spit out a ROI, for example. And I'll stay on this just for a second before I move on. But this calculator, you'll have to input like your conversion rate, what you're paying for ads, a whole bunch of different variables that you'll be able to plug in, and then it'll spit out a number for you. And you can use this, again, going back to creating that report, you can use this in your report. You can use the ROI calculator included in your report. Awesome. So Google Analytics, not much to say here, but a lot of people neglect this, right? They don't set it up properly. Google 4.0 just released, and there's a lot more that you can do. My recommendation is if you're early stage in your business, go ahead and make sure that your conversion funnel and everything in Google Analytics is set up properly, because you don't want to get to tons of traffic on your website and then you're trying to backtrack and fix your analytics and make sure your conversion tracking is set up properly. So make sure that your Google Analytics is set up properly. So Google Analytics 4.0, a couple of things that they're focused on. So more focused on privacy, also durable for the future. So as regulation changes, as industries change, for example, the iOS 14 upgrade, it's supposed to be durable for the future. It's intelligent, so using machine learning to unearth insights about customer journey cross-platform. So it'll just essentially give you more insights to what people are doing when they're coming to your website. So you can already kind of see a user flow. It takes it one step further. And then it has enhanced integrations with Google ad platform. So if you're running any search ads or display ads, Google Analytics 4.0, the idea is that it'll integrate better and optimize campaigns for larger performance. Next tool, Facebook conversion tracking. So this is really basic, but there's so many people who just don't have their Facebook pixel set up properly. So for those of you who don't know, the Facebook pixel is a piece of code that Facebook gives you that you install on your website, and it essentially allows you to track different actions that are happening on your site. So form fill outs, sales. If you have an e-commerce store, then you can find out how many people are adding things to their cart, how many people are initiating checkout but then not completing the purchase, many different things. So they call those events, and it's really easy to do. It's actually no code required, and events allow you to quite literally click and define what an event is. So if you're looking for leads, you can tell Facebook that, hey, whenever someone clicks this submit button here, register that as a lead. So make sure that your events are set up properly. And then before you run any ad dollars, before you spend any money on Facebook ads or anywhere, make sure that the pixel is working properly. So you can use a Chrome extension called Chrome Pixel Checker, Google Chrome Pixel Checker, and it'll essentially let you know how your pixel is set up, what events are firing, and I highly recommend that you make sure that your pixel is set up before you start running ads. We've run into this situation where we'll start running ads, we'll spend thousands of dollars, report comes in, we're like, okay, well, we don't know what's going on. We start digging deeper, and we're like, oh, well, the pixel's not set up properly. So you don't want to run into that mistake. So, okay, what events can you track, right? So you can track things like ad payment info, view content, so what content did they view? You can track add to carts, you can track add to wish list, complete registration, contact, donate, find location, initiate checkout, and so many other actions that the Facebook pixel can track if you set up your events properly. UTM parameters. So these are basically a small text code that ends up on the end of your URL, and it's going to give you insights to what's actually happening with the traffic. So let's say you post something on Instagram or Instagram story, you have a swipe up. If you add a UTM parameter to that URL, Google Analytics will turn around and show you, okay, well, this traffic came from which source, which medium, which you can even drill down as to which piece of content is driving the traffic. So if you're posting links anywhere online, highly recommend that you're using UTM tags and making sure that they're set up properly. Awesome, so home stretch here. There are a lot of different tools in the world of analytics. The ones that we use at Socially In are Report Garden. So Report Garden, what it allows you to do, it allows you to connect all of your different ad sources. So if you're running ads on Google, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, then you can connect all of those sources and then you can see what's happening in one central dashboard. So if you have a marketing team, for example, and that marketing team is spending money on all of these different channels, and you're like, okay, what's happening with our money? You can tell them to set up a dashboard within Report Garden. The reason I like Report Garden is because it's drag and drop builder. So you can literally build a custom dashboard by saying, okay, well, I want to see the cost per lead. I want to see the conversion rate of this landing page. You can do this for free with Google Data Studio, but it's a lot more complicated than drag and drop. Another tool that we use is Sprout Social. So Sprout Social is a robust social media management tool. It allows you to create reports, visual reports, so people can digest the information, and many, many more things that it allows you to do. For example, in Sprout, you can tag all your content. So let's say that you're posting educational content and testimonial content. Well, you can tag that. So every time you post educational, you tag it education. Every time you post testimonial, you tag testimonial. When you run the report at the end of the month, it's going to show you that, hey, every time we post a video testimonial, it way outperforms an educational piece of content. So that gives you insights to where you should be spending your production budget, right? So should we be creating more short-form testimonial video, or should we be putting more resources into education? And then Hootsuite Impact. So Hootsuite Impact, again, it's a new product by Hootsuite, but does very similar things to the tools that I mentioned above. And Sprinkler is for enterprise. So if you have an enterprise company, Fortune 500, large company, you can use Sprinkler to manage your social and run reports and do analysis. Okay. So next, how do I increase my ROI? So we kind of talked about how do you measure it, how do you think about it, how do I ultimately now increase it? So first and foremost, testing, right? A and B test, try different objectives, try different channels, try different creatives, and also test the copy more often. What we end up seeing a lot at Socially In is people will switch out the visuals, but they'll keep the copy the same. It's the same description, but different picture. Try to switch out your copy more often. And for example, we actually did a test, not recently, a couple months ago, about link in bio. So we wanted to see whether or not if you said link in bio in your post, did it decrease your reach? And we found that it didn't, right? But we had to not say that in order to find that information out. So quick case study. So Monster Energy, what they did, so they were always running campaigns around two objectives, either reach or video views. And for the launch of their new flavors, they combined both reach and video views objective, and they saw a 9.2. So all this is saying is test, right? Like, don't just stick to the objectives that you've always done, change the objectives out. What I mean by this is whenever you're literally setting up your campaign in Facebook, Instagram, wherever you're setting up campaigns, they're going to give you options of what objective you want to reach. So do you want video views? Do you want conversions? Do you want event attendees? Whatever you might want, continue to test and see what works. Next step, so gathering, right? Social listening is really important in all of this. Once you start to run ads, once you start to get comments and feedbacks, start to look at what people are saying. What's the perceived value on various platforms? What are people literally saying about your product, and use that as information on improving yourself. Skip this, can't see. And then last but not least is remember the goal, right? Like, we can all get caught up